dodged an incredible bullet in the 2016 election. But do not think this is over. You still have Michael Bloomberg out there. You still have all of these anti-gun factions that are out there. And we need you to be part of this great organization, the oldest civil rights organization that this country has ever known.
That's our guest, Lieutenant Colonel Alan B. West, tearing it up at the NRA Annual Meetings. and you know, in that segment of the speech, you made a great point. I tend to tell people that dealing with anti-gunners is dealing with a hydra. Like there are multiple heads, and we dodged one bullet with Hillary Clinton, but she was just a potential figurehead that will be replaced with another figurehead. And especially when we talk about people like you mentioned with Bloomberg and some of the kind of offshoot organizations posing as gun safety organizations, you know, it's definitely not the time to start getting comfortable. And I sometimes fear that's what some people are starting to do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, we started out talking a little bit about, you know, Texans versus Cowboys. You know, I was born and raised in Atlanta, so I'm a big Atlanta Falcons fan. Yeah. And I can tell you, I saw the Atlanta Falcons get complacent against the New England Patriots. They were up 28-3. Yeah. And when you don't keep your foot on the pedal, then the next thing you know, you lose. And so it's very important that we realize and look at all the different means by which the progressive socialist left is going to seek to undermine and infringe upon our Second Amendment right, being it, you know, restrictions on magazines or this, you know, SBR short barrel rifle versus carbine pistol, or going after outdoor ranges, which is one of the things that recently happened in a court case up in West Virginia. Yeah. In Louisiana right now, what they're trying to do is say that anyone that is, you know, accused of being a domestic abuser will lose their gun rights for 3 to 4 months. I mean, so someone can just blatantly just accuse you of something and you're supposed to lose your right. But what is so interesting, Colion, is that you have people that tell us that, you know, we have a right to own a home and we have a right to health care, we have a right to free college education. But yet this standing right that has been there since our Constitution was ratified, the Second Amendment, why are we having this debate about the fact that it should be our right? Why are we having this debate about, you know, I have a license to carry here in Texas? That license to carry should be good in every single state in the United States of America. But yet you look at California, where they have ruled out there, you can't have a concealed carry license. So these are the fights that we must continue to do, and that's why this organization is so important.
No, and you're absolutely right. And sometimes I wonder, are we dealing with politicians who have an obsessive amount of naivete when it comes to the ideas of reality? Like in terms of, like, I'm not safer because I'm in California now. I needed my concealed carry gun in Texas the same way that I need it in California now when I travel there. But for some reason, they make these arbitrary distinctions between state lines with respect to my constitutional right. No one is up in arms about it. However, I can take my car and drive clear across the country. No one will ask me a question. And only one of those two things is a constitutional right. People forget driving a car is a matter of convenience. That is essentially a privilege. But yet I have more rights with my car than I do with something that could protect my life. Why are we placing a higher value on something that could protect my life over something that's just merely convenient for me?
Well, I think one of the things is that is how politicians seek to leverage their power over you. Yeah. When they can say that we are the ones that will grant you the rights that we determine are rights. And that goes back to that incredible phrase that Thomas Jefferson wrote that, you know, talked about our inalienable rights come from the Creator, of these being life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They don't come from man. So when you start having these politicians that believe that they're the grantors and eventually they will be the takers of those rights that they are, you know, bestowing upon you, you're going away from being this constitutional republic to being this constitutional monarchy, and you're going to a point, like I say, where you don't have citizens, you have subjects. Yeah. They're dependent upon the whims of 535 people in Washington, D.C. or wherever to determine what you can do with your life. And so, you know, the Obergefell versus Hodges case, I've talked about it, where 5 people on the Supreme Court said that same-sex marriage is the law of the land. Well, why is it if they can make that decision, the Second Amendment is not the law of the land? I mean, help me out. I'm just trying to ask a simple, you know, legal question.
I'm just as baffled as you are, and I'm an attorney, and I'm still baffled. You know, and you know, I was looking on your website, and you recently posted an article I think people fail to understand, you know, how badly things can deteriorate with respect to our rights under the Second Amendment. Where, I mean, I read an article where the guy was advocating the idea that if I were to use a gun to stop an intruder or to kill someone who was trying to kill me, that I've essentially I've stripped them of their due process. And
Yes.
and I know when he was writing it, he thought in his mind, oh, this is just going to be awesome the way I come up with this argument. And, you know, on the surface, it's fleetingly clever. But in reality, it's violently stupid. Based on the idea, like, first of all, the burden of due process rests with the government, not with individuals. So, you know, and so in that sense, if I'm an individual who used a gun in self-defense, the person who's in need of due process at that point would be me.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
No, without a doubt. And again, that is your first inalienable right, is life, to protect your life. So I don't, you know, what part of this do they not understand? That's kind of like what the drill sergeants used to say to, you know, us as dumb cadets. And so when you look at the fact that you have city governments like in Chicago that are telling individuals, you don't have the right to protect yourself. You basically have become prisoners. When you look at, you know, an agenda that is basically saying, you know, Americans, this country that was established on the right to bear arms and the right to defend ourselves, you no longer have that right. Even though it's enshrined in the Constitution, we say that's the law of the land. Well, we're going to pick and choose what we kind of think are the laws, and we're going to pick and choose what the rights are. And so I would go back and say, okay, very simple. If you guys are telling me Obergefell versus Hodges, Supreme Court, 5 people, unelected jurists, that this is a law of the land that you guys have decided, then you have to explain to me why the Second Amendment is not the law of the land. You can't have it both ways.
You know?
And that's the challenge that we should make. And that's why, again, an organization like the NRA is so important, because no one else is going to take up that fight.
No, absolutely not. And I think in many ways you answered my initial question at the beginning of the hour, you know, why they go out of their way to vilify organizations like the NRA. We are talking about the largest organization in defense of the Second Amendment. That is a constitutional right. I don't see them going after any other organization that's in place to protect a constitutional right the way they do the NRA. And like you just pointed out, they are one of the few organizations that pretty much serves as the last stop before pretty much the complete eliminating essentially what the Second Amendment is. We may still have it on paper, but if I'm not able to apply it in reality, what difference does it make? It's kind of like concealed carry in Chicago. I was talking to somebody about that. They're like, well, we have concealed carry now, but we literally virtually cannot carry our guns anywhere. It's like they say, oh, yeah, you do have concealed carry. Well, no, not if I can't ever take my gun anywhere, because you've placed signs in place to say, well, you can conceal carry except for here, and everything else. And that's just another tactic used by the other side with respect to the Second Amendment that, as we pointed out before, we've got to stay vigilant. We've got to stay on top of it, because they're very crafty and they're very sneaky in the way that they do things, where they can distract us with one big thing here while quietly they're going state to state, just literally taking away right after right after right after right on the Second Amendment. And before we look up, it's like, whoa, what happened here? And I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened in California.
No, without a doubt. And that's why one of the critical things that you saw happen in the previous administration, where Harry Reid changed that filibuster rule for lower court judges from 60 down to a simple majority, because when you flood the lower court judges with, you know, those people of that like mind, then they're the ones making those decisions in Chicago, or them making those decisions in California, what have you. So again, this is how, when you're not able to make the stand on the legislative process side, then you go to the courts, and you use the courts with judicial activism to you know, institute your agenda, which is just so against who we are fundamentally as a constitutional republic.
No, you are absolutely right. And you know, and I talk to a lot of people who don't necessarily agree with me on the issue of firearms, but none of them really also appreciate the idea of the separation of power in terms of, you know, the legislative branch, judicial branch, the executive branch, and understanding how those all work within each other. And so in their minds, when you say judicial activism, it means nothing to them. They by and large think it's a good thing, especially if it's on their side, not realizing it usurps the fundamental components of what this country was about to begin with.
We don't teach that. Yeah. I'm 56. I mean, we used to teach civics. Yeah. And so everyone understood that. And even Schoolhouse Rock, I mean, yeah. Little snippets used to talk about how to make, a bill becomes a law and everything. So you understood that very much so early on. But now when we get to the point where we say, well, and look, the current administration, the Trump administration is talking about this. Look at all the executive orders we're doing. Yeah. Well, that's not how we're supposed to operate. Yeah. But they have to do all these executive orders because the previous administration did executive orders. And so we continue to spiral and go out of control and get further and further away from fundamentally what we're supposed to be. So, yeah, you have this judicial activism where people are legislating and creating laws from the bench when the Constitution in Article 3 says, no, you're just supposed to interpret the law. Yep. You're not supposed to create law and then tell states, you have to abide by this. No, that's not your role. Absolutely. And so we can't have 2 or 3 people here, 5 people there that are making laws in this country. And I'm very concerned. I mean, thank God we dodged that bullet with Hillary Clinton, but the Heller case is being challenged. Yeah. Yep. And that's one of the key things about having Neil Gorsuch there.
Yeah, and the funny thing, and I think people fail to realize we won that by a narrow majority.
5-4.
Like it wasn't like it was a landslide. It was like, well, if there's Heller. No, like that was this much. And that's what Gorsuch represents now. But even then, we still got to continue on. Like we're not talking about people who are on the bench who are in their 20s. Like that court can slant either way at any given moment, just depending on reality in and of itself. So we've definitely got to stay on top of it. But I do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with me today. It was definitely a pleasure. Absolutely. I hope you join us again soon.
I'll be happy to, and I look forward to going out and shooting with you. I know you're probably a better shot than this old guy. I'll try to give you a run for your money.
It's all movie magic, man. It's all movie magic.
All the best.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Colion.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about a new way to teach kids about gun safety.